Ambassador, thank you for joining us. Can you explain why Russia didn't accept the offer of a ceasefire straight away with a view towards peace talks? What was wrong with just saying, okay?
Just saying, okay, what does it mean? Do you believe that it will be immediate truce along 2,000 kilometers of our frontier? This is not possible, definitely. Every ceasefire, every truce should be well prepared. Otherwise, it will be pretty soon, it will be derailed by this or that side because of certain provocation, because casualties and so on. So this is not a possibility. Just say, let us say, right like that, and here is the truth. So we did accept it, but it should be carefully prepared, and otherwise it will not work. What we need, in fact, it is overall very serious agreement which has security guarantees
for both sides,
not only for Ukraine but also for Russia. It should be fundamental guarantees which will prevent any possibility of resume of war, of hostilities, of whatever it is, and it should establish in Europe a regional security system.
President Trump last night said he was very close to a ceasefire and a peace deal. Do you share his confidence?
I cannot speak myself for President Trump at all, and actually I cannot say that I am fully aware of the context and talks which had place, and they did. In fact, it is between the security counselors of both sides in Washington and Russia, and plus Mr. Witkoff was in Moscow. I had a prolonged conversation, more than 3 hours, with President Putin. So I believe that a lot of details, as I understand, has been discussed in these conversations.
Yes, I mean, how close do you think it is?
I have no idea.
Because to listen to Washington, yes, they would say, well, we're very near a deal, and they want a deal quickly.
I have no idea. That depends. If what we are talking about, if we are talking about a certain framework, about principles of a future treaty, I do believe it should be a treaty. It is just not a memorandum or something like that. Initially, when I have a lot of experience, say, in negotiation process, let us be Caucasus or the other side, initially you establish certain principles. Then a framework is coming in, a framework treaty. Then upon this framework and principles, you start to elaborate articles of the text of the treaty, or it might be not one paper, but several papers with annexes.
That's not how Donald Trump works, though, is it?
No.
He doesn't work in frameworks and principles.
I'm not a businessman. I am a professional diplomat. But actually, if you look into some very serious deals in business, it should be as well carefully prepared with legal participation. And they do it working out every detail of it until it will be done.
So he said last night, again, that you're talking about land and energy. And dividing up assets.
For us, most important is the elimination of ground reasons or the, how do you say, the most important origins of the conflict. And there are at least two of them. One is that Ukraine should be neutral, a non-nuclear state, as it is stated in its initial version of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence of '91. And second is that, of course, the right of minorities in Ukraine should be fully re-established. It means so-called denazification.
Right. Does Ukraine then get to be a sovereign country?
Ukraine is a sovereign country, and it
well, a sovereign country gets to decide on its alliances and its memberships and its neutrality or otherwise.
You know that we have started a conversation with Americans in Riyadh on a very interesting note. They have said that initially is, of course, the most important is the principle of protection of national interest. But they do realize that other countries has their own national interest and security interest as well, and they have to be taken into account. They have also said that, of course, interests of Russia and the United States are different, but they can coincide and overlap, let us 50%, something like that. We have to work, they have said to us, when they are overlapping, we should promote these interests for the benefit of two countries. And when when we disagree, most important is not to go to bring these disagreements into confrontation. That's
but you see the point,
philosophical
don't you,
approach.
It's not real sovereignty if you don't get to choose.
We talk about Ukraine. No. I'm speaking that Ukraine is not only on the western side. It is not alone. It is our neighbor, and every country should take into account interests of the neighboring countries. So Ukraine, if it would like to continue its normal, peaceful existence, and look, it should take into account our interests and be friendly. Be friendly, not be hostile to us.
So this is not really going to be a free country, is it?
Why?
That's the truth.
Why? If that is funny. It is a free country live normally in free world. They do not wage war with each other.
No, but a free country gets to decide whether it is friendly or not.
France and Germany has long ago agreed that they do not hate each other and they live peacefully in spite of very long history of contradiction. France and Britain decided to live in peace, absolutely, after very long history of hostilities to each other. Why we cannot live with Ukraine normally?
But would you say Britain and Russia are friends?
Not at the moment at all. Britain is conducting...
So you don't have to be friends, do you?
Okay, the policy of United Kingdom towards Russia is hostile at the moment. Let us say, I would choose the word adversarial, but it is even hostile because they are saying that we need to continue sanction Russia, to reinforce Ukraine in order to put a strategic defeat on Russia. What else? We need to crash Russian economy. It has been said yesterday by Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So how we can treat this? It is, of course, very adversarial policy by the United Kingdom towards Russia.
So let's come back to what you think is acceptable in terms of the future of Ukraine. Can Ukraine have an army?
Well, every country has an army, with the exception of whatever it is. It's pontifical.
But do you want
Vatican probably does not have one.
But does Russia believe the Ukrainian army should be limited in its scope?
Do. Yes, we do.
Beyond not being a nuclear state?
Yes, we do, and we have had a prolonged negotiations with Ukraine in April 22, where limits on Ukrainian army has been fixed.
What would the limits
be? I do not preclude what's going on, what will be the outcome of the current negotiations, but I have seen the draft treaty.
But that is still a condition.
I do not convene negotiations here. Negotiations, it belongs to the future. We are now talking about the truce, about cessation of fire. But as for the limitation of Ukrainian army, it is, I do think it is obvious, because Ukrainian army before the conflict consisted of 250 people. It was the biggest army in Europe, even twice bigger as Polish has an army, with the same comparable population.
It's being speculated that America may recognize Crimea as Russian in advance of the rest of the peace negotiations. Is that the kind of step you wish to see first? To sort of take that out of the negotiation effectively? I
have read this speculation, as you have said this morning, of course, in the newspapers. I do not know whether it is true or not, but of course, if this step will be done, it will be a great achievement, of course, for peace and normalization of the whole situation in Europe. Because it is fact of life that Crimea is Russian. A referendum has been conducted. 2 million of population of Crimea are Russians. They do not live in Ukraine. They would like to live in Russia.
The referendum was questioned, we should say, by the United Nations.
No. Don't ever mention to it. It is referendum is not questionable. It has been done in accordance with every standard of it. A lot of observers has come to Crimea during a referendum, and if someone do not recognize, what we can do.
Well, I mean, the United Nations expressed concern about it, but I presume there would be another one in the future. But the point of taking Crimea out of the discussion would be that it then focuses on the territory that Russia now holds. your foreign minister has said there's no question of giving anything up. Is that still the position? That there's no question of Russia withdrawing from any territory that it currently holds?
Why should we? We have liberated a lot of territories. I do not speak about percentage, of course. We understand that population living on it has also a certain desire, not certain, but of course a desire to live with Russia, because we provide, it is natural, we provide much better conditions than Ukraine in terms of infrastructure, building a lot of housing and all of that, and we are restoring these lands. Right now it is visible.
But you don't have everything you wanted, do you? So, I mean, I suppose the question is, are there other bits of Ukraine that you also want, that you don't currently control?
At the moment we speak, and this is our official position, that there are 4 regions that has been incorporated in our constitution, and that's the case, plus Crimea, of course.
And is that it? In terms of what I mean, are there other bits of Ukraine that you want as part of this negotiation?
I have never heard about anything else.
The fear is that if you say Russia can hold on to everything it's taken, then why wouldn't you come back for more?
Well, this is also a question of negotiation, of course. It is just, you are asking me a hypothetical question, and I'm giving you a hypothetical answer. Well, there are lots of fears in the air that we are going to attack this and that. There are a lot of threats that has been invented by British government or in the parliament. They are seeing that Russian ship is going through the English Channel, and imagine, this is such a threat for Britain.
But it also might make sense. I mean, there might be a demand from Russia, you know, where people say, well, we've got all of that. Why can't we have the rest?
Why can't? Because we are targeting to a very serious arrangement which will stop all aggressions, war, and regional tensions, and that's it. So if we will come to terms with Ukraine, it will be an outside arrangement as well for the regional security. Outside arrangement for the regional security will preclude any kind of, as I have said, differences, contradictions, controversies in it, like it existed in 90s, I will say, in early 90s, when we have come to, since 75, when we have established Helsinki Principles and Decalogue, and then Paris Declaration, we have come to normalization total between Soviet Union, then Russia, and Western countries. We were living under certain principles, and there was no tensions, I will say. We have launched many partnerships with the European Union, with NATO. I was in this partnership, with Council of Europe. We were members of it. Council of Europe in Strasbourg, we have been members of it, and actually that was a total normalization. However, unfortunately, Western countries under the leadership of the United States decided differently. They decided that they are going to enlarge NATO and towards our borders, and to secure a security for just a group of states, ignoring interests of the others.
I'll come back to that.
This is what is important.
So what that means is, if you're not prepared to give anything up, then you get to keep, for example, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, which was the biggest nuclear plant in Ukraine. And indeed, last night, President Trump said, we're talking about energy and assets. You see the future as Russia holding on to that very important piece of energy infrastructure.
I have heard from the Americans that it will be a discussion about that, but I do not see the point, because this plant is now is on our territory. Basically, it is now controlled by the International Agency for Atomic Energy. Mr. Grossi, his leader, has visited several times. It is under normal conditions.
But does that mean Russia could turn the lights off in Ukraine?
Well, Moscow has built up in Ukraine a lot of power plants, nuclear power plants. They still have in possession, I do not know how many, but at least, well, it is less than 10, but more than 5, I guess, or something like that. But there are lots of power plants. Besides, they have a lot of hydroelectric power plants. So Ukraine has a lot of capabilities. They just should be used and maintained properly. And under the previous governments in Ukraine, they were in a very poor conditions, a very dangerous condition for Europe.
Can I ask you then about the coalition of the willing?
Yeah, sure.
That Keir Starmer and President Macron are assembling. You've always said there's no question of international troops in Ukraine, is that still a red line? Because there are apparently 30 countries who want to take part in the security guarantees of Ukraine.
It's very impressive, of course, a number of 30 countries, but what they are going to provide, I'm not sure. Well, there are two sides of it. First is that, of course, for us it is unacceptable that NATO troops will be stationed in Ukraine. It's a matter of principle. It is because they will be stationed over there. They will need to construct bases, route of supplies, and so on. It is. So
why is it so unacceptable?
It doesn't matter what kind of label will be on these troops. It is still be NATO troops, and it's a position of principle.
But you already have NATO troops on your border. So why is it different in Ukraine?
On our borders. What do you mean? Well, no, of course, NATO has in the recent 2 years seriously increased number of troops close to our borders. It's around 2.5 size. They have increased troops along our borders during a recent 2 or 3 years on Ukrainian soil. So it doesn't matter for us whether it will be under European Union label or whatever it is.
But why just explain why it's so important,
okay,
because if we're talking about peace...
Let's talk about the different. One is the condition for the negotiation, which I have emphasized. The other is, let's imagine that they are over there without our consent. Yeah, what they are going to do? For instance, it will be we have a truce, we have a ceasefire. If by some provocation clashes will resume, what these troops are going to do? Tell me, are they going to sit idly? Then what's the sense of it? Or they will intervene on the side of Ukraine. They will be in a great danger in this situation without have rule of engagements, without having a mandate at all. So this is a senseless idea.
But you're talking about peace.
Let me please.
You're talking about peacetime and security guarantees. So in a peace scenario.
In a peace scenario, it should be consent of two sides of the conflict. They are in the conflict zone. If we have a peace, then they can come only with consent of both sides.
Ukraine that's what I'm trying to understand. So
and we do not give our consent for it.
Why not? If we're talking about peace,
no.
in which you don't believe NATO is going to invade Russia.
And for this, you need to study the whole history, the history of international relations. You never have a biased or one-sided troops on the territory. You can only have United Nations troops, OSCE observers.
So you would accept UN troops?
Yeah, I don't
from
think
non-NATO countries?
Well, if it will be something like that someone will have to control, to police, to monitor what is happening. If it will be a mandate by the United Nations, why not? Why not? Of course, yes. We do have a history of OSCE observers, but it was a poor history because they were one-sided and biased, unfortunately.
But there is no question of British troops being involved in Ukraine at all.
Here we are coming to your previous question, since UK has taken up a very hostile, I would say, and belligerent attitude towards Russia and all of that. I don't believe that we will be happy about that.
Just explain then, what is the difference, again, between having armies or troops from NATO members in Ukraine and troops in Finland, Sweden, Poland, all on the edge of Russia? Why is there such an in-principle difference?
No, Finland, Sweden,
when it comes
Poland,
to Ukraine?
Finland, Sweden, and Poland at the moment they are members of NATO, and NATO is developing bases on its own territory, since they are presumably saying that they are defensive organization, and this basis has been deployed in a sense of defense. Ukraine is not member of NATO, so it will be an outside deployment of NATO troops and of NATO bases, and it will be targeted against Russia, obviously. So that's the answer to your question. Of course, we will be against it.
What is the next step for you in terms of confidence building? You know, does Russia expect sanctions to be lifted?
Well, we are under thousands of sanctions, 10,000 as American sanctions, so of course we do not expect. We have lived under sanctions for our entire life of Russia, different sanctions. There was Jackson-Wenning sanctions, and then it has been changed for the other sanctions and all of that. We used to live under sanctions, and our economy is growing 4% a year, differently from European economics.
So that's not a crucial
this is not crucial.
part of it?
This is not crucial. I think it is just if U.S. would like to do business in Russia, as I'm reading actual statements about that, then of course the bulk of it should be lifted. Initially starting with issues of money transfer and all of that, because it is most impeding for development of business. But let's see what's going to happen later on.
So where do you see Russia in the world if this can be solved? Do you want Russia back in the G8?
No, we are not.
Do you want to be part of international organizations?
No, we do not have an aspiration of being in G8, and we are part of international organization, of a major one of the United Nations, of OSCE, and all others. Where you have four international organizations here in London, we participate in all of them. International Maritime Organization, coal, sugar, whatever it is. We are part of it, so we continue to.
But you've been treated as a pariah by much of the world.
It's a silly idea. It is. Well, I have seen this tendency has started around 10 years ago. It is not in the world. It is only in Western countries, in Europe.
Well, that's much of the world.
It's about some 18% or 1/8. I mean, it is or 20% of the world. So don't even mention it to me. But in more general terms, that was a silly idea because your politicians and they stopped to talk to us some 10 years ago. They are talking about us all the time, but among ourselves. So it has led to tension. It has led to major misunderstanding. I remember I talked to in your parliament. It was late 21, like December or something like that, or beginning to 22, and it has caused serious interest in it. So that was a dialogue. It's very rare now. Now your parliament has prohibited me to go into it or to talk to the parliamentarians. So your politicians, unfortunately, they have a wrong perception of Russia, wrong perception about real threats because they are talking only to each other, not to us.
Yes, so do you want that to change? Do you want to change the perception of Russia
if they are going, if they will,
what are you prepared to do
they will have better understanding. If they will not only talk to each other or to the French counterparts or American counterparts. Americans dared, and in fact they changed this policy. They decided that it is no go, that they should talk to us. Should talk to Moscow, should talk to Putin to have the negotiations. So they have come now to the idea that this trend is an impasse. It leads to not only to tension, but it leads to confrontation. However, UK perceive this line not to talk to us, but to go into confrontation, to belligerently continue to supply arms, supply money to Ukrainians. What they would like to do? To destroy Ukraine totally. This is a possibility.
But what I mean is there a bigger international prize? I mean, it's not that long since the world was able to deal with Russia on other big issues, other conflicts around the world where you have influence. The questions of climate change, international finance, crime, war in Africa. Do you see Russia being a trustworthy partner in these issues with the West in the future?
Just look at the map. It's a big country, much bigger than Europe. Perhaps not in terms of population, but in terms of territory. We are in the East and in the West, and we have a lot of influence in Middle East, in Africa, in Asia, in a lot of parts of the world. It will be absolutely normal to work together. And as initially I have told you about new American philosophy, which has not been promoted by Democrats at all, but to which Republicans has come, that we should, in the overlapping areas, we should work for the benefits of our role.
Are you surprised by how Donald Trump has changed the American position so dramatically? I mean, it's left much of Europe mystified.
I have read a phrase that when he has come to power for the first term, he did not sufficiently prepare himself, as he has expressed it, for the presidency. And it has been seen, actually, in his deeds and his actions. Right now, he's different. He is prepared. And he put a lot of people who thinks alike himself to the important positions over there. So now it is coherent, as we understand. Now it is a coherent international policy. Or perhaps it is a lot, I would say, causing certain uneasiness about Greenland, let us say, about Panama Channel or it is, but as he faces Russia, he has a lot of understanding. And not only because a major change in his policy, but he knows the history. When he was for the first time the president, he has full possession of information about how Ukrainian conflict developed.
Do you think he's a friend?
No, I have no idea, not mine at all. Of course it's...
And what would Russia think about America taking Greenland?
We have no opinion.
No opinion? You don't object?
We have no opinion. It is between US, Denmark, European Union and Greenland itself.
But you don't think it's in principle wrong?
It is up to the population of Greenland to decide what they would like to do.
You took a lot of troops from North Korea. What does North Korea get back?
I'm not sure, yes. I'm not sure, I do not know. Nobody has seen North Korean soldiers. It is only in the air that they could be present over there or not present, but
You don't know whether they're there or you're denying that they're there?
I do not neither confirm nor deny. I simply do not know. But I read a lot of bloggers of those who are taking part in the conflict right now, also in Kursk area and near over there, from the British sources, from other sources, international sources, about North Korean, but nobody has mentioned nobody has mentioned the role over there or any other places, since nobody has seen them. So I simply do not know.
And what about the situation with Iran at the moment? What do you think Russia's role is in trying to improve the situation between Iran and America, where Donald Trump has asked Iran to enter into talks over its nuclear program and Iran is reluctant?
You know that the day before, Friday, actually, we did have a trilateral meeting in Beijing between Russia, China, and Iran. And there were strong signals that Iran will not bow under pressure. Iran is a big country and very serious country, and one should not push it very hardly because they have a lot of capabilities, in fact, and it is much better to negotiate with Iran, to negotiate nuclear deal, and not to involve other things into that, like U.S. administration is trying. It's not about missiles, it is not about regional issues and all of that. If we have certain negotiations with Iran about a nuclear deal, then we should finalize it on the terms which will be acceptable both for the Iran and those who are involved in the negotiations.
Can I just come back to the question of security guarantees, which you mentioned at the beginning? You said Russia will be prepared to accept international troops, perhaps from the UN or the OSCE.
OSCE, I did not mention the OSCE. OSCE has had observers on this line.
Okay, from the UN?
The Secretary General of the OSCE was last week in Moscow. But it is premature to discuss it in detail or seriously, since we do not have a treaty right now.
Is that the sum total of the security guarantee that Ukraine can expect?
The previous drafts with Ukraine that we did negotiate in 2002, they did not contain any mentioning of boots on the ground, as your Prime Minister has said. It is sufficient that it will be a treaty. We did have in the history lots of treaties without any kind of boots on the ground or something like that. It is just trustworthy thing. And guarantors, of course, will be other countries watching it, United Nations, of course. There are things like that. It's an international practice of international law.
If we come to a peace, then, what will Russia's compromise have been?
Don't ask me about that. It's a funny question. You never speak about compromises before you start negotiations.
Well, but Ukraine is obviously being expected to give up territory. Is there any compromise that Russia is prepared to enter into?
My friend, it's senseless to discuss compromises before the start of negotiations, absolutely. Don't drive me into that.
Right, but you're not ruling out that there will be some. It's just part of the process.
It's an issue of negotiations, of course.
And finally, just to come back to Trump, I mean, you say you don't know whether he's a friend. A lot of people in Europe wonder why he has come round to the Russian way of thinking so fast. Can you have an explanation for that?
I do have an explanation because it's a common sense leads Americans now to talk to Russians. But I don't see this common sense, unfortunately, in the most of the European leaders, with except of one or two. They are not guided by the common sense. They are guided by a political necessity to continue to perform, to make impressive gestures, to talk about international politics, instead of dealing with difficult problems, internal problems that they are facing.
It's so violent a change, people wonder whether you've got something on Trump. Does Russia have something on Trump?
What do you mean?
Compromise, secrets, pressure?
We have gone through this 10 years ago already.
No?
Nothing has been.
Is it a no?
No, it's a prosecutor has been assigned, as I recall, and it has come to nothing, like most of the talks here.
So he's just come around to thinking your way off his own bat?
As I have said, he's a personality, he's a business person, he has a lot of common sense, and he does understand what is needed and what is not needed.
Are you optimistic as we talk today?
No, in that sense, I'm optimistic because everybody would like to have peace in Europe, as well as, but this peace should be strong, reliable, and long-term.
And what is your message to the Baltic states, to Moldova, to other people who are looking at this with horror and thinking, well, they could come after us next?
We have a problem with Ukrainian government because it's extremely nationalistic. It was prepared to launch a very absolutely disastrous attack against Donbass, and that is we tried to settle it by diplomatic efforts during all this time. We didn't manage, unfortunately. So it happened now, but it's a different situation. It's totally.